Hello and welcome to today's webinar about T-Splines for Rhino, entitled How T-Splines Changed My Approach to Making Jewelry with CAD. I am Matt Cederberg, the co-founder and CEO of T-Splines Inc., and we're joined today with by a special guest, the jeweler Chris Botha.
Matt, how are you?
Good. Thanks so much for coming, Chris. Chris is in Australia. What time is it there right now?
Too early. 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock on a Saturday morning.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be hungover.
so we really appreciate Chris getting up early in the weekend to do this with us. The software we'll be using today is T-Splines version 3.2 for Rhino. And just to introduce a little bit more about Chris Botha, he works both for Holloway Diamonds and the Digital Jeweler. He'll get more into what his roles are at those companies in a few minutes. But before I turn the time over to Chris, just a little bit of housekeeping. During the webinar, we'd ask you to use the chat box liberally. A number of you have already taken advantage of that, and that's kind of one way that we have a lot more fun during these webinars is if we're interacting with you. So please type in questions throughout the webinar, and we have some staff here that will be typing back answers, and we'll also audibly pass questions on to Chris when appropriate for him to address. Please feel free to tweet as well during the webinar if you do that. We'll be doing some of that as well. We are at T-Splines or pound T-Splines, and we are recording this webinar. So with that, before we turn the time over to Chris, I'll just explain a little bit of the agenda of the webinar. Chris will take a few minutes to explain a little bit of his background, what he's done in CAD in general, T-Spline specifically, and just kind of what his jewelry process is. And then he'll actually jump in and model one of his T-Splines models that he's done live. And our purpose in having him do that is really to have you have the chance to ask him questions. So after that, we'll be able to take questions during that modeling then afterwards, and we hope to get out of this in about 45 minutes to an hour. So one final thing before I turn the time over to Chris, I just want to launch a poll to see who we have here today, and the question is, what industry are you in? We occasionally do these webinars featuring specific T-Splines modelers, and I'm just curious how many of you are in jewelry or consumer products, architecture, or automotive, transportation, or other design. So leave that poll open another few seconds. And okay, let's go ahead and share the results of that. And it looks like there are almost everyone here is in jewelry. So you're talking to a crowd that wants to hear what you're doing, Chris.
Fantastic.
That's good.
All right.
Okay, well with that, let me turn the time over to Chris.
Thanks for that, Matt. Okay, T-Splines 3 for Rhino. I'm reading the slide off the page here. Well, first of all, my name is Chris Botha. All right, now, manufacturing jeweler. For the jewelers that are watching this, and I know this is quite important, when I define the term manufacturing jeweler, this is a CAD webinar, seminar, but I'm actually a manufacturing jeweler. As with most of you, I spent 5 years apprenticeship, and I've made everything manually for the last 20 years. And my transition to CAD in jewelry has only really been over the last 3 or 4 years. I have been using CAD for probably the last 10 years, but more in video editing, for creating slide frames in 3ds Max and that sort of stuff. But jewelry CAD itself only over the last 3 or 4 years, and surprisingly enough, the reason that I moved into CAD was not because I consider myself a designer, but because I cannot draw. So when I sit with a client and I've got to try and sketch a ring down, I find that my sketches are so terrible that I couldn't actually present a concept to a client properly. And this is a big problem if you can't design and you're supposed to manufacture jewelry, which is a design industry. So I spent a bit of time learning to use CAD, and in that process I used some of the same programs most of us would have used, probably JewelCAD, ArtCam, and a couple of the other sort of programs that we all grew up on. I think the turning point for me was when I moved to Rhino, which really is king of the hill in terms of design programs, especially for guys like us with slightly more organic work. But I've never considered myself to be a artistic or sculpting type of person until I started using T-Splines about 6 months ago. So for the first time I actually feel creative, whereas previously I was just drawing. I was a copy artist. I'd have a look at the picture and I'd be able to copy it into CAD pretty well, pretty quickly. But I would say that for probably about the last 6 months or so, I've had a complete turnaround if I use CAD, and that's largely thanks to T-Spline, because I'm able to do more sculptable sort of work that I wasn't able to do before, and I've found that I've quite enjoyed doing that. My day-to-day job probably is about 40% CAD and 60% handwork. Most of you that are online, I saw just now from the comments page, would know me from 3D CAD Jewelry or from our Facebook and those sort of places, and I do work for quite a few of you. I typically take on work that nobody else wants to do, stuff that's too difficult or too big or too hard, which is fantastic, but I wish you'd all give me easier work if you don't mind. And also I have a unique perspective on everything I do because, like most of you, I am there from concept, from the time the customer walks in, to the pencil sketch, to the CAD, to the casting, to the work-off and the setting, and then the actual presentation to the client. So we have to have a lot more precision in what it is that we do, and I think that the way that we use CAD is far more difficult than the way a lot of other people use CAD. I think that's enough background on me and how and why I use CAD. So let's get on to the Ouroboros. I think the moment I decided to buy T-Splines was when I did this model. I had seen T-Splines before, and I'd watched demos on YouTube, and I didn't see the value in it for me until I did this model. And this was for a client of a diamond mining firm, and it's a massive bangle. It weighs about 110, 120 grams. And building this in Rhino was the first time I'd ever had to do anything sort of organic with that little face around the top of the snake over there. And I went to work with this on a torus primitive and a sphere, and had to work with edit points for the first time in Rhino, and it absolutely got me dead. I spent 7 hours working on just the face, and a friend of mine happened to come around. He was watching. He was over my shoulder, friend Colin Creed, and he said to me, "What are you doing over there? That's pretty much like that T-Splines thing, whatever it is." And literally, I went on the web and I had a look at T-Splines. It was too late. This model was done already. I had a look at T-Splines, and for the first time looked at it seriously, and I spent about 2 or 3 hours playing with it. And I think it was about 5 days, and I bought it, and I've not looked back since then.
So this
in
was
reality, T-Splines. Sorry.
Oh, so this was a model you made in Rhino then?
This was built completely in Rhino with no plugins. I used flow along surface for the scales, and built all the surfaces with torus primitives and spheres, and so you can understand how difficult something like this would be to build without T-Splines.
So I
wish I'd had T-Splines when I did this.
Yeah, so you made that in Rhino, and then you transitioned into some of these models, which you did once you got T-Splines.
Once I got T-Splines, that's correct. That is correct. I think the only problem I have with T-Splines is that I didn't start using it a lot earlier.
Nice.
I know that sounds like a big plug for you guys, but you know I'm not getting paid anything. I really believe, and I believe that GemVision is now incorporating T-Splines in their new version of Matrix, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think that comes out really shortly.
Which is fantastic, because I really believe that jewelers will get a lot of use out of this program. I strongly believe, as you know from our emails between each other, that jewelers should have this. If you don't have this in your toolbox, you really have to ask yourself why not.
Yeah. So if you just looking at, there's a couple of pages here of T-Splines models that you've done. I don't know if you want to just speak to any one of these in particular, as far as...
Okay, well, the little rabbit one over there, I work with a Chinese girl, and as you know, it's the Chinese year of the rabbit, so just as a joke, she said, could you make me a rabbit ring? And literally, it took about 10 minutes to nut this out from a quad, from a TS quad ball.
Wow.
The skull with the hands on it is from a set of 3 models for a biker club, which is Hear No Evil, See No Evil, and Speak No Evil. And I believe that you wear the 3 rings together, and if anybody speaks some evil or hears some evil, or I believe you give them a bit of a biff, you can tell that the rings are quite big. So I like my kneecaps where they are. I'm not going to go into too much more detail on the biker clubs. The third picture over is probably 90% of my work. That's what I do. The other models are fun, but the third one over and the one just underneath it, that is what I do all day. And that's typical matrix work. But like you can see, the weathers and all the fine detailing on the side, the stuff that before would have been really difficult for me, the kind of stuff that I would have had to just sort of explain to customers rather than draw, because it would have taken me longer to try to draw that in CAD than it would have been to try to sketch it with pencil. So my workflow, I'm not entirely sure how most jewelers work, but I think a lot of guys work like me. A client will come in, give you a concept, and you have some amount of time to quickly sketch down a few ideas, then go to the back, do a drawing, and get the client back in and present to them. So I don't have a lot of time to waste because my time gets billed out quite expensively. So if I spend 3 hours drawing a CAD drawing, it's become not worth doing in CAD. You might as well have done it by hand or made the piece by hand. So unlike most sort of designers online, I don't have weeks and weeks and weeks to produce pieces. If I can't do it in an hour or 2 hours tops, then I've negated the use of having CAD in the first place. So T-Splines has enabled me to do very fine, intricate work really, really quickly.
So with these more traditional settings then, Chris, do you find yourself using T-Splines to get a specific shape or to increase some of your speed, or maybe a combination of both of those?
I'm not entirely sure. I haven't tested T-Splines 3.2, but I know with 3.1 we lost history inside the TS Taurus primitive.
Yeah.
Something went wrong. But that the collet on that ring I make using a Taurus primitive. I pull out a Taurus primitive with symmetry over 6 points and then pull them up. And it's changed the way that I make my collets for rings nowadays. Because I can just pull up extrude certain sections and then add in some edge loops to give myself a hard defined border. And stuff like that I would have had to use booleans before. What I now do is, like I was saying to Hamish, I have what I call T-collets. Inside my matrix I have a little folder with all my little collets, and because they still have symmetry applied to them, I can pull out any size stone, pull out a little T-collet, and just drag my arms out until it fits the stone. So when I say it increases my workflow, it just means I'm not starting from scratch, having to draw a tube around the stone and then boolean out all the little cuts. I've got a quick, easy piece that I can just pull into the design, pull the little sections out, and it fits my stone literally in seconds versus half an hour's worth of drawing.
Gotcha. So you've got kind of some T-Splines clip art, and since it's still editable, you just kind of save that, pull it into model,
right,
and tweak that.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Gotcha. Yes. Okay. Just let me just maybe, I don't know if you can speak to this dragon piece at all. Anything interesting going on there? Or?
That was, I'd literally been using T-Splines for about probably 3 or 4 weeks or something, and it was the first time I tried something really, really organic. After the big snake piece that we tried before, a friend of mine up in the north of Australia had one of these come into his shop, and a client wanted it much bigger. Now I believe that this is a mass-produced charm from somewhere or the other. A few guys have showed me this in their metal scrap, so this is mass-produced somewhere. I'm not entirely sure, but you can't get them in a really big size. So this guy sent me a couple of photos of it, and I think I have to be honest and say that I think this was where I first fully realized the potential of T-splines in my workflow, because work like this previously, I would have had to have looked at it in terms of Rhino, like how would I do that? I have to make a pipe, and then I have to try and boolean the face in, and how was I going to do the claws, and it's just stuff that wasn't going to be possible for me, not feasibly or not quickly. And I'm a sort of a just do it kind of guy. So when I got the picture in, I just started doing it. This really was all TS pipe. This entire model was TS pipe with almost no extrusion, because at that time it was all I knew.
Yeah.
And when I posted some pictures of it, I had assumed that I was the least knowledgeable person about this, but there was a huge push of people saying, how did you do it? How did you do it? So eventually I ended up doing another video of this, and I think if you go to my YouTube channel, which is Nauseumster, there is actually about an hour-long video of me drawing another version of this Chinese dragon using mostly TS pipe. You see, my experience of each time I did this was the TS pipe was brand new when I bought it. It hadn't been in previous versions of T-splines, so I had just assumed this is normal, and apparently it was quite clever use of the command.
Yeah.
So let's have a look next to the dragon, the little ring up the top. To go back one frame, I'd like to tell you something interesting. Most of the jewelers, we had what, 87% jewelers?
Yep.
Most of the jewelers out there are looking at that top ring going, there is no way that thing cast, because those claws are too thin. And Matt, I have to be honest with you and all the jewelers out there, you know me, I don't pull my punches. It didn't cast. All right? It was a complete failure. I had to go in and fix them up. But those collets on the top there are the T collets that I was talking about. So really, I have a little section on the top that I just pull out, and I thicken up the TS pipe for it. So that render of that particular ring actually was not successful, but its successor was successful. The little thing underneath that was a command I found in Rhino: extract wireframe, extract.
That sounds right. Yep.
Yeah, something like that. And I made a sphere and extracted a wireframe, and I just ran the TS pipe command. So everything you're looking at on the screen so far has all been TS pipe.
Yeah.
TS pipe has been a really, really big friend to me. I would recommend most people watch, I think Jean did a video for TS pipe and advanced usage on TS pipe.
Oh, yeah. Yep, Tom did that.
I would definitely recommend watching that. For jewelers, this is probably one of the handiest commands there is.
Yeah, no, that's what our experience has shown us as well. If you could just this piece that you uploaded to our forum is really interesting to us, just because we're a software company. We don't really see things get physical, like turn into physical product very often. But I just really liked how you kind of shared how you went from the T-spline file all the way to the finished product on this one.
Okay, this was once again was TS pipe. The base on the left-hand side, the first two images over there. What I did is I drew out a bunch of curves, ran a TS pipe, and then just pushed and pulled the node points to fill out the blank areas. In a previous lifetime with other software, I may have used ArtCam to produce shapes like this. But the problem is with applications like that is once you do it, it's done. There's no coming back from it. You'd have to blank your canvas and start again. With T-splines, what this allowed me to do is I could go in and fill in all the little sections that I wanted to without having to redraw everything or reflow everything. The T-spline section of this job was actually very, very small. The second image from the left was the only T-splines in it. For the whole rest of the cross, that was just copy and pasted. So I would copy and paste one piece next to the other, and then the same thing around the sides. And the rest was just basically a Rhino extrusion. I think the drawing on this whole job was maybe about 2 hours worth.
Yeah. And one thing I like, one thing I like about this example, Chris, is that you show a nice combination of using T-splines and Rhino commands in the same shape. Sometimes when people start T-splines, they forget that they know Rhino and there's a lot of powerful commands in Rhino, so I like that you combine both.
I have had this conversation with so many people on the 3D CAD forum and actually outside of it. You use a hammer to hammer nails and use a screwdriver to drive screws. Don't mix the tools up. The tendency to grab a new tool and try use it for everything will trip you up. You know, I was finding I was trying to make shanks, and I was trying to do all kinds of stuff using T-splines where just a curve and a profile and sweeping would have been so much faster. So the tendency to try use T-splines for everything, and when it doesn't work, give you a negative impression of the tool, can be really bad. Use Rhino for what it's good for, and use T-splines for what it's good for, is what I find.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
All right, so that piece was actually cast in silver. It was subsequently, it's been cast in gold, and there's a smaller version of crosses, and then an even smaller version. Now, the bottom section of that actually swings. So the top 3 arms is one piece, and there's a rivet through the bottom section of the arm, and it swings. I'm not entirely sure. I don't get to see these sort of clients. I just get the work, or what the significance of the cross is, or what the significance of the pattern is. But the client got the first one in silver as a template, and then went on to order the rest. And there's a St. Christopher on the top of that. It's not really clear in the picture. And this kind of work is I love getting it. Unfortunately, it is a really big part of my work. And thank you for adding that last picture. Not only does it show off my pot belly, I call it my godfather. My godfather, I'm on the phone there and I'm speaking to Mario and I'm saying, you don't bring her the cash, so come break your knees, you know?
Yeah, that's what you get for putting it on our forum. So, well, good. So this is kind of, I wanted to start off by sharing these examples just to kind of give people some sort of exposure to what you're doing with T-splines. Now, if we can kind of maybe step into the actual demo, this is the piece that you modeled. Was this is this for a client, or was this just an exploration of the tool?
This was for a web client. This is somebody I met on Facebook, who has a consulting firm, I think in Israel, the beauty of Facebook. And he had a picture of a ring. I don't think it was his ring, but he wanted a copy of it. But you know the story with copyright. As long as you're 10% different, you're still okay. You're not going to get sued. So he had a client who needed a copy of the ring and asked me whether I'd be able to do it. And to be honest, when I had a look at it, I thought, no way. But like I said, I'm a kind of get-goer, and I thought, well, let's give it a bash. And as it turned out, it wasn't that hard to draw. It was difficult to get it looking really good, but the actual starting point on it was complex, because first of all, he has a pearl that's fully drilled, so there needed to be a pin traveling from the one head to the other head. So the piece had to be pretty perfect, and also the cup of the mouth had to fit perfectly over the pearl, so you didn't have too much gap. You can't see too well in that image, but there's also 2 tiny little teeth that had to be visible. So even though the cup of the mouth had to be perfect, that little section had to be pulled away from the pearl. So that kind of control is really, really difficult to do in Rhino. If you're just doing a Boolean, how are you going to use, if you're using the freeform displacement tools, how are you going to bend just that section of the lip of the mouth backwards and then add in 2 little nodules for the teeth and this sort of stuff. So as simple as this ring looks, the actual planning and the preparation for it took longer than the drawing itself, because I had to try and figure out where I was going to start. I was going to start with TS from lines. How was I going to get the shape that I needed? And I'll be honest that I've practiced this about 3 times since drawing it, because when we first started talking about doing this, I said that I would do the snake, and I've done it 3 times since, and each time I've done it in a different way. But I have to say that the first way I did it is still probably the best.
Okay.
I hope to get pictures of this finished piece once the guy produces it, and I'll post them to the T-Splines forum.
Great. Great. So as we transition to the webinar, or the demo part of the webinar, let me go ahead and make Chris the presenter. Let's see. Chris the presenter. One thing that now I'll go ahead and kind of jump behind the scenes and do a better job of kind of managing the questions. So please type in questions as Chris is going. The purpose here is not to kind of necessarily showcase what an amazing T-splines modeler Chris is, but he's willing to kind of show you his thought process and how he approaches models. So please type in questions, and we'll answer those either by typing them back or answering or having Chris address those. And I guess one other request we had as we start off is if you would go ahead and use the the questions panel, please go ahead and type in, why did you come to the webinar today? Is there a specific question or problem that you're having with T-Splines? And if you can go ahead and just type those questions in now, then Juan and I can address those in the background. It won't interrupt Chris any, and hopefully this will be time well spent for everyone. So take it away again, Chris.
Okay. Now, Matt, I've just pulled up a sphere because I know that we had some speed issues before. Is this coming through okay for you guys?
Yeah, you know what? It's fast enough that I don't think it will be distracting. So.
Okay. Okay, so I'm doing this on the fly once again. It's not scripted, so you'll have to just bear with me. I see a few familiar names in the audience, so those of you that know me know that there's also the Okie Dokie drinking game, which I've explained. Every time I say Okie Dokie, you have to have one drink. If you can make it to the end of the webinar, you win a prize. I'll give you the model. All right, so as jewelers, we all know that there are a couple of constants when we design something. The customer's finger size is a constant, and the gems or the pearls are a constant. Everything else around it is flexible. So the design process always starts by getting your constants out on the screen. So in my case, I'm going to put down the finger size, which is 16.8 millimeters with a circle, and I also know that there's going to be a 10 millimeter pearl going into this. So I'm going to draw a sphere from my world origin with a diameter of 10 millimeters. Okay, now the reason I'm drawing the sphere from world origin is I'm going to be drawing the snake head. As a jeweler, everything we do is based on a round principle because the ring is round. So I like to work around the world origin, and after I've drawn it, I'll move it up to finish the rest of it. I'm going to lock this down so that I don't move it later, and I'm going to start drawing my snake. Now, when I started with the snake, I had a couple of things that I had to try figure out what was going to happen. The snake has to start, when this pearl is up at the top of the finger size, the snake has to curl it around the pearl and then come down the finger and then come back up and go around the other side. Because it's a reasonably big piece, the client also asked if we could make it hollow. And the fit has to be reasonably perfect, because when it's hollow, the jewelers out there, you know that if you cast something hollow and you bend it too much, it has a tendency to want to split or crack. So how to make it was an interesting question. Did I start by working in my side view and drawing out the shape of the mouth, projecting it onto this sphere, and then drawing some lines across and using TS from lines? Did I use a quad ball and actually start extruding from the quad ball? There were a few ways I tried. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to try and show you all the ways that didn't work. I'm going to go with the way that did work. So how I started is I went with the TS quad ball. Where are we? Ghosted. For those of you who think it looks like I'm pretty awkward in my interface, I've changed my interface to standard basic Rhino so that most people who are watching this after the fact will recognize it. Normally I have some very complex homemade menus inside my Rhino. So,
yeah, you've even taken off
right,
the toolbars, Chris, so thanks for stripping that down.
Yep, I've stripped everything back down, well, as far as I can to represent what a new user would get when they open Rhino. The only thing I have changed is I use my middle mouse button to bring up my T-Splines menu. So I've customized my own manipulate menu to do this for me, just because it's the workflow that I'm used to.
Oh, that's a great idea.
For most T-Splines users, you'd have the menu popped out along the side over here. So you have to bear with me a little bit on that. All right, so what we're going to start with, also for people who don't use Matrix, when I say the word F4, the Matrix program has world origin, which is 0x0y0z, coded to the F4 key. So when you press F4, it will start whatever you're drawing from the world origin center of axes. So I know that in a couple of my videos I say, oh, something from F4, and people go, what are you talking about? So that's what that's about. So I'm going to do a quad ball from F4 with a 10 millimeter diameter. So TS quad ball from F4, and I want a diameter of 10 millimeters. And I'm going to be making a a snake with eyes either side of its head. So in this case, I do want symmetry on it. You could apply the symmetry after the fact, I suppose. I like to just do it from here. So I want symmetry over X because I'm going to be working in this view. X symmetry, yes. Oh, it is on already. Okay, obviously I've been working with this morning. And then my number of segments is going to be 4. Typically that starts out on 2, which is a very low quad ball. I'm going to leave that on 4 and press enter. Okay, I'm going to explain to you why I went with this. If you have a look at these 4 sections here, let me grab faces. If you have a look at this section over here, you can see that you're sort of already approximating what a snake's mouth is going to look like. If you imagine a snake with its mouth open biting over a ball, you've already got the open part of the mouth and it's tapering towards a smaller part up the top there. I'm going to delete all the other faces except these and then tweak them a little bit, and I think it'll all become clear once I get going on it. Alright, so let's dump everything I don't want. I'm going to open this full screen so it's easier to see. That, that, and that. Alright. So what we're left with is just basically this little section of quad ball that's kind of flowing along the sphere quite nicely, which means that when I come to TS thicken, this is already shaped around the pearl quite nicely. Now I did find that this was a little bit small for me, so I'm gonna move into my verts mode, and I'm going to just rotate these guys around F4 to come a little bit further around the pearl. Oopsie, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some symmetry across the middle of this, just so I don't have to do double work. TS symmetry. To you, axial, and discover, and across there. Right, so just so I can get my snake's mouth nice and even. Alright, so I've switched over to my verts mode over there. Just stop me, Matt, if you think I'm jumping too ahead of myself over here.
Yeah,
so
no,
I'm going to the
I think
control
you're going
mode.
well. Just one comment, Chris. Could you just show on the drop down menu where the TS quad ball function is? If you just go to the T-Splines drop down menu at the top of the screen. So
I get it from there. T-Splines.
Yeah, you can also go from the top. Just primitives is at the top. Yeah, a lot of people haven't seen this menu before.
And quad ball.
Yeah, that's where you get the quad ball.
All right, a little bit about how I use Rhino is I'm an old DOS programmer, so I love command lines. So you'll see me using my command line quite a lot. Unfortunately, it's just a throwback because I'm really old.
Yeah,
so,
and I think for purposes of this webinar, using the command line is just fine. And if you do have questions about what's going on, then type them and we'll type back answers. But as far as just the basic T-Splines user interface, we have quite a few videos on our website showing that. And our main hope with this webinar is to get kind of more of the thought process behind what you're doing. So I think you're doing well, Chris.
All right, so I'm going to grab these points and pull them around my world origin just to get, I want the snake's mouth basically to bite a little bit further over the pearl. Now the green line obviously is representing the center of this piece. So I'm going to try and just pull that out so that I'm getting it back on the pearl. Now initially I pulled these sections down so they're touching on the pearl, but then after I finished everything I figured out that I have to pull them back up because I've got my little teeth that have to grab in over there. So they're actually pretty good just where they are. Alright, so when we have a look at all of this here, we've now got a pretty good starting point for this to start making a snake head. Initially I'd started with just some curves and I started extruding the curves outwards, but then trying to stitch them up was a bit of a nightmare. I found that TS thicken really was my friend in this case. Where are my menus? Normally I type this, Matt, to keep everyone happy. I'm going to start looking for the little icons. Alright, so TS thicken is I'll just pull a little bit out, about say there. Alright, and we now have, in your mind's eye, you need to keep keep your mind on the fact that this is the bottom of the snake's mouth and this is the top of it over here. So what we're going to start doing is I need to start pulling the top of the snake out, but I need to bear in mind that I'm going to have to hollow out the inside of the snake after. And when you use the TS thicken command on a hollow piece, you've got an option to crease the edges, and I found that creasing the edges on this was really not the result I wanted. So when I do the next extrude that I'm about to do now, I'm going to do it twice, and I'm going to ask you to just bear with me as to why I'm doing it twice, because you'll see afterwards and I will explain. So I'm just going to extrude this face twice in a row now, and the reason for that is at a later point when I come to hollow it, these two little edge sections here close to each other are going to give me a nice hard corner without actually having a hard corner. I know that probably doesn't make too much sense now, but it will when I come to hollowing out the snake's head. What I'm going to do with that, with those faces still selected, I'm actually going to do a scale from world origin and just pull it out, say about there. Okay. So the reason I extruded those faces twice is you see that you've got this single set of faces running in there. At a later point, I'm going to come in and delete these inside faces here, and what's going to happen is I'm going to have a nice hardish corner without it being too hard. It's easier than trying to add in faces afterwards. Alright, so at this point we've got a little bit of body to it. Now we're going to start pushing and pulling. I'm going to remove my symmetry across the middle now. So, Matt, by the way, is there a way to remove only one part of symmetry, or do you have to remove everything and then start reapplying?
Yeah, I think you just remove all of it, and then you can just reapply it by discovering.
And then start again. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so TS remove symmetry. TS symmetry off. Okay, and then I'm going to put symmetry back on the center axis on. So let's do it through the menu system. TS symmetry. We have the axial symmetry, and I'm going to discover it via that, because I still want symmetry on either side of the snake's face, but the bottom of my snake and the top of my snake are no longer going to be the same. So I'm finished with where I want the jaw to be, but I only want the top to change now. So I'm going to grab this face here, and I'm going to switch over to the manipulator. Just out of interest, Matt, is there going to be at any point a manipulator sort of like the other CAD programs where you've got move, scale, rotate all inside one manipulator?
The universal manipulator. We're trying to tie into we're trying to tie into the Rhino gumball for version 5, and I think that you get that there.
All right. Now, when I first started drawing this, what is a snake? What is a lizard? What is a crocodile? What is a dinosaur? I don't know. It seems to me the difference is how hard the front of this is. And the first couple I've tried look like lizards, and the next few I've tried look like dinosaurs. Like I said, I'm not an artist, so you guys are going to have to bear with me a little bit over here. But the snake's face comes up, and then I think this section over here, I'm going to switch to verts. I'm going to pull just this section out. I think it comes up a little bit higher than the rest. And the center section actually starts coming in. Now, this may not be your version of a snake, but it's my version of a snake. And in the case of this client's job, he had parve running on the inside here, a series of stones running down here, and then either side of it. Okay, so that's round about the face area I need, and the jewelers watching this will know that I'm leaving enough thickness here to give me about 0.9 of a wall on the inside afterwards, which is just thick enough to set the stones in. Now, I think that my snake's nose needs to be a little bit narrower than this, so I'm going to just grab these sections. Okay, and you'll see what I mean. I think that looks more snakish and less lizardish. Alright, let's grab these faces and start extruding. So what I want to do now is I want to start making the next section of my snake, which is going to become the body. Okay, so I'm holding, for those of you that are new to T-Splines, I'm holding down the Alt key and I'm grabbing the manipulator and I'm pulling, which basically is going to extrude a new set of faces for me. While I've got those faces selected, I'm just going to grab my scale tool and bring them in, because the snake's body, the snake's neck obviously starts getting smaller after it comes out. I'm going to bring that in there too, and I'm going to rotate it. I like to get these sections as square as I can now, just so that everything matches up after I'm done. Okay, what does that look like? I think I'm looking all right. I'm going to start grabbing the next section, and I think I'm going to pull that in a little bit. And by the way, if anyone has any suggestions about drawing snakes, I know that was it Olafuki on the T-Splines forum drew a beautiful snake the other day, and I meant to try and nick the model off him, but I never got time. And this really is the beauty of T-Splines. You're able to make little tweaks like this without having to reflow and resweep everything. Okay, and do I want the bottom of that snake's jaw to move in? Probably I do. Let's switch to face mode and grab those faces and then just pull them in a little bit. Okay. Now, the eye cavity for the snake, I've got quite a bit of comment about this on another forum that I'm on. The eye cavity for the snake is quite stylized because a teardrop shaped ruby is going to go into it after the fact, right? So I know that one of them doesn't really look like a snake, but it's my snake, all right? So let's do this, and what I'm going to do is scale that in a little bit. And how are we looking? I think I'm looking all right there. I probably want to move that vertex out a little bit, that line, sorry. Now, as you can tell, I'm not a big fan of your keyboard shortcuts, and I apologize for saying that on a live webinar, but it's not a thing to do with T-Splines, it's a thing to do with my workflow. I just can't find myself using the keyboard shortcuts as much as what other people do, so that's why I've got the middle mouse button.
That makes it easier to follow.
So I've got my middle mouse button set up as a quick way for me to access faces and edges and verts, and then also the different manipulators. Okay, so I think that's looking about right. I want to maybe just push this face in a little bit. Let's grab faces. Let's push that in a little bit just to make it a bit more hollow. I think that'll do the job. Okay, now the last thing I want to do is just get the little section of eyeball going here. To do the eyeball, in reality, I'm doing the eyeball on this one just for this webinar. The user in this case is going to solder in a white gold section around there with a little ruby in it. But for the purposes of the webinar, let's just extrude this section and pull it out and create a bit of eyeball, as it were. I'm going to change my drag mode to view. I find that the view drag mode to me is a fantastic tool because it allows you to do a far more analog motion than any of the C-plane. I've got that in there. Alright, so I'm going to take this and make it a little bit smaller.
And just one comment as you're doing that tweaking, Chris. The heads-up display that Chris has up in the top corner is the one that we had for T-Splines version 2. We found that most of our users prefer this one to the new one we added in version 3, but at the end of the webinar, I'll have Chris take some time to show how to get that version 2 heads-up display if you like that, or also what the version 3 heads-up display looks like as well.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. Just another workflow thing. When I'm looking for vertices, sometimes it's really difficult to find them. I mean, if you switch to vertex mode, you're going like, wow, I'm looking for the one that represents the end of that line, and I only figured this out the other day. Was the easier way to do it is just to go to your edge modes, select the edge you want, and then flip to your vert modes, and then the two that you need are already highlighted. So you can just grab the one you want, and in this case I'm wanting to pull this one down a little bit. I think, what do you think, Matt? Do you think that looks sort of eyeballish?
Oh, Chris, you're asking the guy who's just drooling over everything you do. I'm so bad at art.
All right, so I think most of the jewelers out there would know that what's going to happen to this now is that the setter is going to whack a big hole into there, and he's going to put a marquee shape stone into it. I think I might want to just move that vert down. I'm going to go back to my C-plane mode and just pull that in, make it more sort of, yeah, more sort of marquee shape, not marquee shape, pear shape. Alright, so I'm happy that my eye is where my eye is going to be, everything else is ready. Okay, so at this point, we've got where the snake is going to be, and I've been doing everything around my world origin. So this is where everything starts getting funky for me now, is I'm going to switch off my symmetry because I'm going to start turning my head around and I'm going to start building the body of the snake. Actually, if I was clever, I'd be doing my teeth now. Hey? All right, this is something I keep forgetting every time I do this. I'm going to unlock my sphere and hide it. And where do I want to grab? I'm going to subdivide. You know what, I'm not. My apologies, sorry. I'm changing direction halfway through. And I'm going to move everything back up. The reason I'm not going to put the teeth in now is I forgot that I need to hollow this. This is unscripted. Sometimes I make boo-boos, folks. If I put the teeth in there, I would have had a hell of a problem trying to get rid of them after the fact. Okay, so the pearl's going to sit on the customer's finger, roughly about there. Okay. And the head of the snake, I'm going to rotate. Say, I don't know, something like that. Remembering that what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to get this to flow around the finger and come up to the other side.
So Chris, as you're laying that out, we've got a great question come in from Jason. He's wondering that as you're laying this model out, to what extent are you keeping exact dimensions like stones or metal thickness in mind at this point?
Well, when I started the webinar, what I was saying is there are, for all jewelers, there are constants. Your finger size is a constant, the pearl is a constant. If you're hoping to do high precision work with a tool like T-Splines, you're in for a bit of a shock. It is a very analog tool. You can produce a high precision part, but what you're going to have to do is do all your analog work around it, then take your pearl and boolean it from the face. Remembering that you can, I mean I can insert edge loops in there to the nth degree and I can crease edges to make it fit this pearl perfectly, but you know what, it's going to take me an hour to do versus just turning this into a NURBS surface and booleaning my pearl from it. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, using the right tool for the right job. T-Splines is going to get me the snake's head really quickly, and as you can tell, I'm going to have to insert some teeth in there later, so I've got a bit of gap there, and I've got a bit of gap over here. But the snake's mouth is following the pearl pretty closely. Another thing that we need to bear in mind, and I think that this will make more sense to the jewelers than you, Matt, is we need to also consider that this snake has to, number one, has to be grown or milled, probably not milled in this case because it's hollow. It has to be grown on an RP machine, which is going to leave a really ugly texture all over it, and then your jeweler is going to take it and he's going to take sandpaper and he's going to paper the hell out of it. He's going to take a file. You're going to have casting shrinkages. You're going to have all kinds of things that are going to happen to this model before it even gets to your pearl. So I think trying to be too precise at this point it's not only counterproductive, it really is a bit of a waste of your time. Get yourself as close as you can, and if you have a very high precision manufacturing process after the fact, then use the Rhino tools, convert this to a Rhino surface, and use the Rhino tool to do your exact boolean to get the pearl to fit. So in answer to his question, I do bear it in mind, and I try and get as close as I can, but I also bear in mind that I'm going to be using the Rhino tools at the end of the day to get the perfect fit that I need. Is that useful? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, no, that's I think that's a great answer, and it's always good to keep in mind kind of what tolerances you're really working with, and it sounds like the bottom line for you is you just take that into consideration and do the best job that you need to based on manufacturing process.
Quite often, okay. I'll explain a little bit more about that as I go along. I'm going to have to remove the symmetry from this piece now because I'm going to want to be pulling this left to start going around the shank, and if I pull this left, of course, all that's going to happen is the other end is going to The other end is going to move in the opposite direction, TS symmetry off on this guy. Okay, so let's have a look at how we've got this guy following around the pearl at this point in time. Your look is up to you now. I think, as I recall, that for this client I had this rotated slightly more around the world origin, somewhere around there maybe, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm going to now, so we started out with a quad ball that I cut to ribbons, and I'm now going to use TS pipe to create the body of the snake, and then I'm going to marry it with edit points. And I'll actually ask you a question when I get there, Matt, because I ran into a problem trying to marry this up, and I'm not going to illustrate it for this purpose. I'm going to start from about here, and I'm going to start drawing a curve that comes around to about there. Switch on the edit points for that. And let's bring this out. It wants to come down a bit. Out. Okay. So I don't want to bring my shank any narrower than this, so I'm going to have to start playing with my snake's head now. So I'm going to turn the points off and grab these faces and start pulling them around. So I want you, and I'm going to lock that surface because otherwise it starts getting irritating every time. When you select through a shaded view like this, for some reason, no matter what you select here, the surface in the background wants to select as well. Alright, so let's grab these guys. And let's go in a side view. And let's start pulling them around. So I'm wanting them to match up right about with that line. Okay. I also want to have a look in this view, and I'm going to switch myself back to the viewport, to the view drag mode. And what I'm doing when I do this, by the way, for those of you who are wondering why I'm tilting it like this, you see this edge over here and that edge through the back there. I'm actually tilting them till they go over each other, and that way I know that when I'm in my view mode, I'm more or less staying perpendicular when I do this rotation. And I'm going to rotate that so it's sort of square to my line. And then the other thing I want to do before I start deleting faces off this is, while I need a hollow inside the snake's head up the top there, the snake's body in fact is round on the top and flat on the inside. So I pretty much got the flat part of this sorted on the inside already, but I don't need a hollow near the top. So I'm going to grab this edge over there and I'm going to pull it out a little bit. I'm going to get myself about there, and let's pull that out a bit. I want to get this looking kind of round. So this really, to me, is the beauty of T-splines, because how are you going to transition? Oopsie daisy, I've got the wrong one. How are you going to transition with a sweep from a hollow over there to a round section over here and still have a flat on the bottom? Okay, I think I'm just about ready to start building the rest of the snake. So that's the preparation work done for the head of the snake. I'm going to delete these two faces from it. Use new. Okay, and I'm now going to do, I might have switched that to box mode in a second, and then I'm going to TS pipe this. Now TS pipe is your friend. I love TS pipe today. Let's use the menu system. What does TS pipe look like? It's little three jobbies like that. Is that it? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. The only comment
so when you do this TS pipe,
we need to have some more okie dokie instead of oopsie daisy, Chris.
Okie dokie. You guys haven't got enough drinking going on, have you? Alright, so okie dokie. Now what we want to look at over here when we do this is the back of the snake, right, needs to become the bottom of the ring, because when we reverse it around the other side of the ring, it all has to line up, because otherwise you're going to end up with a horrible twist in the bottom here. And less is more. So I have way too many segments inside here. So I'm going to go to segments number 1. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to take this down to about, let's have a look at 4. Yeah, 4. Now that may sound like far too few segments, but the reason I'm doing that is that later on when I need to scale this bigger and smaller at the bottom, I've got less segments that I have to do, so I haven't got lumpiness happening. And then we're going to go in and have a look at, if this is the bottom of the snake, let's follow the surface around. It's now facing the side of the snake, so I have to literally go in here and I need to turn this section just a bit more. Okay, so is that right? That's the back of the snake there, it's coming around, and that's the bottom of the snake there. So that's pretty much where I want to be, I think. Okay, so let's... Okay. Now, the next thing, now Matt, you might be able to help me here. Is there a way that I can create a TS pipe with six sides rather than 4?
Right now it's hard-coded to 4. Yeah, so... Yes. Yeah,
okay, all right. It's not a problem. I was just wondering. Okay, not a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create this TS pipe at this point, and I'm going to insert some edges in it because we have 6 edges running around here, and only 4 in our TS pipe. All right, and I could delete some of the edges here, but it changes the shape too much. So I'm going to press enter for now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this edge loop. Let's grab the edges over here. Click, and I'm going to insert an edge loop around about 50% of the way through it. To this edge loop here is going to match up with this edge loop here, and then I need another one in the bottom. All right, so it doesn't matter which edge loop you grab. And that double click bug is still... Okay, let's try it again. Click, got it. All right. So insert an edge loop, and I want to do it right about halfway through there. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I found that when I was doing this, if I just grab this edge, this complete edge loop around there, and this complete edge loop around here, and I try to weld them, that I ended up with some really, really crazy stuff. I'm not entirely sure why that happened, but I'm not going to recreate the problem. What I'm going to do instead is just show you how I got around it. So I'm going to grab this complete edge loop here. It's not working for me there. Let's go through this way. Not going to work. No. All right, so let's work our way around it. What is a shortcut way, by the way, to grab something if I don't have the shortcut keys on?
If you go up in the, if you're trying to create like an edge loop selection, you mean, Chris?
Yeah.
If you select one edge and then you can go to the T-Splines drop-down menu, and there's a selection. Let's see. Yep. Then you go to loop, and that will select the whole loop. Yep.
Right. I believe there's a shortcut key for that, but like I said, I'm not real crazy on shortcuts, so I haven't set it up. All right. So all I'm doing is I'm just lining up all these edges with each other, and I'm going to turn this to box mode. And I'm going to start welding these verts together. All right, so and again, center one with center one, and the edge one with the edge one. Of course, there are probably a few people asking now, why didn't I just continue extruding my way around from the edge of the snake? I suppose you could do that, and I did try in one. I apologize for that. Someone will get that in a minute. I did actually do that in one attempt at the snake, and what I found was that, did I get that right? What I found was that I ended up with very, very lumpy geometry. So I'm going to go to TS Smooth Toggle. Have a look at what we've got. No, oh, so Control Z, I've welded something incorrectly there. Okay, so TS weld U and U.
Yeah, and as Chris is kind of working through this puzzle, I'm kind of glad that he so the first time he tried to go to smooth mode, it wouldn't smooth because there was an error, and that's not entirely uncommon. So I'm glad that he's kind of running into that.
So I'm still having a problem over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back off a few steps, and I'm going to delete my one set of loops over here. I should have the same amount of them. Oh, you know what? Tell me what I've done wrong.
Yeah, so
Tell me what I've done wrong.
yeah, if you want to go ahead and
deleted this face.
Oh, there you go.
I haven't deleted the face. There we go. Okie dokie, okie dokie, have 3 drinks. Okay, let's try this again. Alright, unscripted folks, I apologize for that. Of course I can't weld a bunch of words while I've still got a face in there. What I might actually do is while I'm in here is I'm going to delete this series of faces too, because I don't think I need them. The reason this is yellow, by the way, is because I have my surfaces showing that way. So I'm going to show,
yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, that's yeah, kind of pulling out errors like that is kind of my agenda for today's, because that, yeah, trying to weld something that has a face on it is not entirely obvious that wouldn't work. So glad it was Chris that figured that out.
Because I work in ghosted mode, sometimes it can. Sometimes because I work in ghosted mode, it can be difficult to see what you're doing. What am I doing? TS weld. All right. So now when I work my way around, it should be good. All right. So you and you, you and you, you and you, and
the way that welding is working is the first one is moved. The first point moves to the second point that you select. So if you have one that is important for you to keep
I'm wanting to blend my neck into the shank nicely. So now when I go to smooth, I should be good. All right. So hold thumbs, people. I don't want to make a idiot of myself twice. Here we go. All right. So we've got what it is that we wanted. We have the sort of flat underbelly section going on. We have the rounded top section, and the top of the snake is ending up at the bottom of the ring, which really is what we wanted. Okay, so we're basically almost done. All I've got to do now is I've got to add my teeth and hollow this guy out. So for this section, I want to hide this. I want to hide the ball. So I want to unlock it, number one. I'm going to hide that, and I'm going to delete a few faces from the inside of it. Now, remember in the beginning of the video, I was saying that I'm adding a double set of loops to my initial extrude. That was so that when I delete this set, I don't lose this geometry. What was happening the first time I tried that, when I deleted these faces, the math between the faces started evening each other out, and I started losing definition around my eye area and around my nose area. So I added in this extra set of loops, which allows me to delete this last edging without actually losing any shape over here. Okay, as you can tell, I've kept pretty much everything I wanted. Now, I'm going to try hollow this with the second piece intact. Sometimes what happens is I get a mucky bit of geometry with the hollowing actually coming through the face. If that happens, I'll try patch it. Otherwise, deleting this and scaling the head is what's going to work for us. So I've now got a completely hollow snake. I set my inside surfaces to a different color just to help me know what the inside and the outside of my pieces are. And you can do that in your Rhino options for those of you. Alright, so I'm going to go TS thicken on this guy. Oopsie. TS thicken. And the thickness I was asked to give this particular client was about 0.9 millimeters. Alright, so I'm going to go 0.9 mil. Hit OK and have a look what happened. And so what I was saying before is sometimes when you do TS thicken, this is going to happen to you. You get this sort of funny geometry that didn't work quite well. So I'm going to Control Z this. I'm going to delete the second set of loops.
Yeah, and what that, just to clarify, what's going on when you're thickening is that it will it doesn't make any guarantees about intersecting geometry. So if you have areas that are tight, it'll just go ahead and self-intersect those.
That's right. Yeah. So that workaround that I was talking about when I first started was to try and help eliminate this to some degree. So as you can tell, what happened is I went in and I deleted the second edge loop that I created, not the end one, but the second one. And what it did is it retained the same length without me losing any shape in the eye. And as you can tell now, I have a beautifully finished piece. Its edge is flat, so it's going to still sit around the pearl quite nicely. That hasn't changed, and it's completely hollow, including inside the eye sockets. So this piece has worked out beautifully for us. Let's show the pearl and make sure that we are still where we want to be. So as you can tell, we've still got that little bit of lip up the top there, and we've got a little bit of lip at the bottom over there where our teeth are going to be, but the rest of it is pretty much there. Now you can test this. I'm in my for those of you who are wondering what mode I'm in. Sorry, I'm in the small screen. I'm in fastest mode, but if you were not in fastest mode, if you were in compatible mode, which I'm not going to do now because it really slows down things for me, if you're in compatible mode, you can now grab your snake and you can grab your sphere and you can run the intersect command and you can have a look for yellow lines which are showing where your snake's actually intersecting into your pearl. That's a handy way for knowing, oh, all right, well, these faces have got to pull back, these faces have got to pull back. So that was just a by the way while I was on it. Right, so I'm going to hide this. I'm going to make my teeth quickly. And basically then we've got to mirror this over and we're done. So to do the teeth, I'm going to, I don't know, I could subdivide this. I think I'm going to subdivide this over here. So I'm going to grab these two faces and I'm going to subdivide exact. That was left or right click. Subdivide exact was that right click. All right. And I'm going to put these two here. All right. And let's pull our teeth out. So to pull the teeth out, I'm going to grab that and that. I'm going to go back to my ghosted mode now. What I'm doing here is I'm going to use my view, my drag mode in view, and I'm sort of kind of lining up the two yellow sections over each other so that I know that I'm more or less perpendicular. And I'm going to hold down the Alt key and I'm just going to drag these out, kind of like that. Now remembering, I don't want these to come out really far. All that they're going to be, literally, is they're going to be sort of markers to show that there are teeth. The impression that you're supposed to get when you look at it is that there are some teeth that are going into the pearl. So these are really just little nodules, the tiniest little nodules that that you can make. So I'm going to grab this and this again. That's my lovely wife in the background making me some coffee. Okay, so let's grab that. For those of you who are feeling thirsty, here comes another one. Okie dokie, have another drink. All right, we're going to pull these little nodules out like that, kind of like that. All right, so those are just the little nodules that have got to give the impression that there's something in the pearl. All right, so I'm going to show my pearl again. And as you can tell, they're actually into my pearl a little bit. So back to Jason's question originally, I could go in now, let's just do shaded mode. I could go in and move those little faces upwards, but in reality, if I had to measure what we're talking about over here, if I had to do a dimension between how much that's poking into the pearl, I think we're talking about 20 or 30 microns. By the time you stick this on a buff, that's gone. All right. Plus, if you find a pearl that's perfectly round, you'd be the first person. So there are a lot of things that are going to change how precise you're going to have to work. I used to be really anal about it. Nowadays, not so much. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have to mirror this around the other side. I'm going to rotate around the other side, and I'm going to have to marry them down the bottom and then do a little bit of scaling. This has to be hollow all the way through, so I'm going to delete the faces off the end over here, like so. And I'm going to kind of see if I can, I need my edges, I'm going to try and see if I can get them looking more or less in the right direction. Something like that, and let's move them. Let's grab these ones. It's looking pretty good to me. Right. So the last part we've got to do now is just rotate this around the copy. So the beauty for me a lot with T-Splines as well is that you get to use regular Rhino commands on your T-Spline stuff. Is that neck looking fat? And yes, it is looking a little bit fat over this neck. Seems to get fat just in that section. Sorry guys, I just
yeah, one trick, Chris, are you familiar with the make uniform command?
I am familiar with it, and I find that sometimes with tiny small things like this, it can change my geometry in ways that I'm not anticipating. You know what? Let's give it a go. Let's give it a go, man. TS make uniform. This is
Yeah, it looks like it didn't really affect it much, did it?
yeah. Well, okay. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab these guys. I'm still in my view mode, and I'm going to grab those edges, and I'm going to just move them in. Just kind of get myself evened out. Right. Now, depending on the type of jeweler you are and how anal you are, you can spend a long time doing this. I don't really have all that long for the purpose of this webinar, so I'm just going to keep soldering on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take this guy and we're going to rotate it with copy around F4 to the other side, and we're going to weld our sections in the bottom here. Actually, I might just do it in the perspective viewport that's ghosted so you can see what's going on. Okay, I'm starting to slow down a lot here. Alright, so what we're after now is the edge loops. This fella and this fella. And we want to weld them very nicely. Okay. And view. And right-click. I'm right-clicking to redo the last comment. Alright. So now is a completely sealed, growable unit that's working all the way around. All the jewelers going, wow, that shank is way too thin, and you would be right. And this is why when I created the TS pipe, I didn't create too many sections over here, so that when I'm working in this view and I start thickening up the bottom of this guy, I don't have too many issues with having to even out the lumpiness of it. All right, so I'm going to grab, yeah. Take a look. There's another section. Just grab, yeah. All right, so that's about 5 mil thick at the bottom. Seems to be moving up quite evenly. Okay. So you've got the nice flap for the base of your finger. Depending on how much money your customer is going to spend, you might want to make this thicker or thinner, remembering that this piece is actually completely hollow all the way through. And really, at this point in the game, you're finished. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set my mode a little bit higher, so if everything starts bogging down for me, let me get my control panel out, and I'm going to set myself to compatible, set my mesh, I'm going to leave that on medium, I'm going to set my star smoothness to about 3, and I'm going to go OK. So this might take a second or two to just remesh our snakes. Everyone still with me? You still there, Matt?
Yeah, yep, yeah, lots of questions coming through, Chris, so this has been really useful so far.
Okay. Alright, so what's happening in the background there is just remeshing everything to make it nice and smooth. Okay, I use this little plugin which is Oxpecker, which allows me to quickly inside of Rhino shade objects. So I want to have a look at this in maybe gold. Apply that, and I want this to be a pearl. I want this to be, say, a black pearl, so I'm going to have a look in black rubbers. I don't know what we've got, soft black rubber. And then I'm going to go over to my rendered viewport. Okay, so this is going to allow me to have a look at my geometry in a way that I can have a look to see, how is this working out for me? Is this what my customer wants? Yes or no? Once you're happy with this, you can now go to the point where you would move it to Matrix, or if you're already working inside Rhino Gold or any of those programs, and you would convert this to a NURBS surface and use your gems on the surface to insert your gems over this head area. In this client's case, there were some gems running probably from there down the neck to about here, and then a couple of rubies were going into the eye over there, sort of a teardrop-shaped ruby traveling down the eye over there. If there's enough time in the webinar and you guys want me to, I can fire up Matrix and show you the laying of gems on this. How are we doing for time, Matt?
Oh, we're at we're doing fine. Before you do that, let's maybe we can just address a few questions while you're still in Rhino. So
Sure.
one question is, I mean, first of all, excellent job, Chris. Great modeling. We've had just a ton of comments saying things. So thanks a lot for taking the time to do this on your Saturday morning.
Yep, no problem.
But I guess one thing to ask, one question right now is, how do you convert that T-Splines model to NURBS?
Okay, well, I'm going to show you the little menu jobby, if I can remember what it's called, what it looks like. I just use the command ts convert. Okay, I'm going to run the command, and then I'm also going to, let's just get back into maybe a wireframe mode. So you'll notice when you do convert it, that everything gets a little bit heavier. So I'm going to grab this, and the command from the command line is ts convert to Rhino surf. So I'm highlighting it over there. You may not be able to see this because of the resolution, but the command itself is ts convert to Rhino surf, or alternatively you can pull it from the T-Splines menu, and I'm going to look for it and find it the first time myself. So where are we?
It's at the very top.
There we go.
Yep.
Convert to Rhino object, the very first one on the T-Splines drop down. So I'm going to do that now. T-Splines convert to Rhino object, and it's going to take a second, and well, it's made a whole lot of patch surfaces. I'm going to go to ghosted mode.
Yep. Yeah, the reason why there's so many points there, Chris, is the star smoothness that you set to 3. In my experience, usually you can leave that at 0, and it actually stays about as smooth.
Okay, I've learned something new.
Yep, and so if you do keep that at 0, it really gives you a lot lighter geometry.
Okay. Any more questions coming through on this specific part, or does anybody want to see me pull it into Matrix?
Yeah, well, go ahead and open up Matrix, and then while you're doing that, just a couple other questions. Actually, I have the same question. So, how can a pro go between those two jaws in real life? Maybe that's an obvious question for you, Chris, but.
Okay, well, all right. So let me fire up Matrix. Let me find my dongle first of all. I hate dongles. I'm so glad you guys don't use a dongle. All right. So I'm going to fire up Matrix, and while that's firing up, I'm just going to have to keep an eye on it because it tries to load Rhino cam. Do you want to continue? Yes, I do. Oh, shucks, that was silly. So I told it to kill Rhino. Okay. Hang on a second. Matrix is giving me the errors. When you run the dongle through a hub, it sometimes does that to you. Okay, I'm gonna have to open that model inside Matrix again to show you. But in reality, what would happen is you're going to be casting this in gold, right? And in the middle, in the mouth section, on one end of the mouth, remember, don't allow. Sorry, Matrix guys, I'm not interested in you knowing what I'm doing. So what's going to happen? Let me open this in the meantime. What's going to happen is you're going to solder in a little pin inside the cavity of one side of the mouth, and you're literally going to bend the two heads apart from each other, glue the pearl on. I'm going to show you a little bit if I can. So let's just put this maybe on a shaded mode. You're going to draw a line. Well, let's find the middle of the head here somewhere. Where is that? Coming straight out with shift. Okay, where is our line? Okay, and I'm going to move this back. And you're just going to pipe this. Whoops. Okay, let's get that out of the way. Maybe I might open this. I might just finish that part of the discussion inside Rhino. And I'm going to pipe that line with the, I don't know, say yay thickness. And what will happen is this line, let's get that, I'm going to use a T-Splines tool in my view mode to just manipulate that for me. And you would obviously then boolean this into your piece and drill a hole into the pearl. They need to face each other, which is why I started dead from the center. And your jeweler, before he glues it, would literally be grabbing this head of the snake and that head of the snake, and he would pull them apart from each other, because in gold you have quite a bit of play that you can make. He's going to glue the pearl onto the one side, and the other side of the mouth will just clip over and hold it into place. So it'll happen under tension. Probably this piece, this piece probably wouldn't be any good in platinum, but depending, if you drill from both sides and you're happy enough to open and bend it closed from both sides, with strong enough glue you could probably do it in platinum, but in most golds the piece would work fine. Because you're holding the pearl from two sides, you don't have the issue of needing a twist. The person I'm doing this for, if you remember the slides we brought up earlier, we had that one section where I did a sphere and I extracted the wireframe from it. And you were saying what might look interesting was to create a wireframe cage in the middle here with a captive bead rolling around on the inside of it. So the beauty of when you start with something like this, your creativity just keeps going and going and going. You can literally do anything you want. I'm going to try and jump onto the stone section of this model. I'm going to close this file and exit. Oh, goodness me.
So Chris, one question that's come up quite a bit is, how long does it take to learn T-splines? What's your experience been?
Depends on how much you want to learn it. You
so
know, in my case, I find learning new software really difficult because it takes a bit of dedication. It takes my suggestion to okay, so let me explain a little bit about my business again in answer to this. I work full-time for a manufacturing jeweler all day, but I also have a consulting business that sells Minitech milling machines, and I also sell CAD, and I train for CAD. And what I tell my clients is that if you're not prepared to spend at least 2 hours a day in your initial 2 months on your application, then you really need to consider whether you want to use that application or not. I find that 40 to 60 hours is the crux of your learning curve finished. So when I say 40 to 60 hours, I don't mean sitting with a manual for 40 to 60 hours and bashing your brain. I mean just sit in front of your program and try draw something. Whether it works or it doesn't work, that hour counts. It's about an experience thing. It's about getting comfortable with the tools. Watch, if you have multi-monitor like you were suggesting before, watch a YouTube clip. Pause the YouTube clip. Try do what that person did. Spend some time figuring out how to use it. And what you will find is the second time you try copy that person's YouTube clip, you go like, look, I actually find that my way of doing this is better or faster than his way. There is no right or wrong way to use a piece of software. There's your way. And so I would say you can become not capable. You can get your way around the interface in about 15 hours. You can start producing. Pieces in about maybe 30 hours, and you become really good at it in maybe 100 hours. Is that a good enough answer? We still there, Matt?
Sorry, I muted myself. Yeah, I was mainly interested to get your take on that, because we do get a different answer from each person. But that, to me, that sounds a bit right. And I guess I just throwing up the splash screen before we get into more questions, and as we kind of finish this off and whatnot, we do just want to really thank Chris for this. If you'd like to contact him, there's his email there on the screen. If you haven't got a free trial of T-Splines for Rhino yet, then you can get one at our website as well. But yeah, so thanks for coming in. And as you leave the webinar, there'll be some questions that will pop up. If you can answer those just always help us improve our webinars next go around. But kind of with that, I think we're willing to stick around for a little bit more to kind of finish this off in Matrix and then answer some more questions in T-Spline. So let me throw this back to Chris again.
Okay, I've got this chat window up. I'm trying to hide. There we go. There we go. Let me pop that in there and pop that out the way. All right, file and open. File and open desktop. Oh, better not find my porn folder. Hang on a second. Desktop test. Okie dokie, let's load up. Alright, let's put that. And let's put that on red. Alright, now Matrix really doesn't want to be working in such a small screen resolution, so some of these tools are going to be a little bit funky. Now because this is a regular Rhino surface at this point in the game, you can use it in just about all your builders. You can use the Pave builders on it. I've found my experience with the Matrix Pave builders to be less than great.
Yeah, and just to take a step back as far as what Matrix actually is, Chris, Matrix is another software program built on top of Rhino. So it's kind of a plug-in, but it has Rhino running inside, and then it has some jewelry-specific applications on top. And can you just explain a little bit as to why you're bringing it into Matrix at this point?
Okay. Well, I use Matrix for when I'm adding gems to my pieces. I used to use it to build just about everything because it has some really fantastic builders in it. It allows you to build your bread and butter jewelry, like a single stone solitaire ring. You can build in about 30 seconds flat with a couple of clicks. You can build a signet ring in about 10 seconds flat with a couple of clicks. So it's taken the tasks that jewelers do quite often. Let's have a build of things like signet ring build. I might just build this over there. Hang on a second, just to give you guys a quick idea. I'm not demoing Matrix by any means, but just so that our users are aware of what's happening. Where is the builder? Well, I'll try and find this. Let's click start. Okay, so as you can see, excuse my snake being in the background there, but you can pull out a signet ring in like 3 seconds flat, which would normally be a network surface job, or it would be, you'd have a whole lot of work to do something like this. So I'm going to delete that. This is not about Matrix, but it's a jewelry-specific plugin, which really probably is the best on the market. I don't think there is anything better. There are products that come close to it, or maybe at a better price, but as jewelry programs go, this covers just about everything, right from using V-Ray, which I believe is also partnered with T-Splines, for your render engine, through having jewelry tools and so on. But for the purposes of this webinar, what I'm going to use it for is its gem tools, and probably also its prong tools. I'm going to hide that for now. It makes adding gems to your pieces a lot easier. So I'm gonna use the gem on a surface tool in this case. And once again, just bear with me. Matrix was not designed to run in small screen resolution like this. And what it's asking for me is, what surface do I want to put in there? And this is no longer a T-spline, it is an actual surface. It's a Rhino surface, so it's accepted it, and it's happy to get going. And you can see what's happening now is it's popped a gem out, and this gem is following normal to the surface. So the T-spline is behaving in every way. Well, it's not a T-spline anymore, it's actually a NURBS surface. The piece of geometry we built is behaving as it should, as it's supposed to. I turn off O-snaps for this because it tends to make the gems flip upside down and all kinds of nonsense. If we remember that we rotated this with copy around our world origin initially, we don't have to bother setting up the gems on the snake on both sides. We can just build it on here. I'm going to go in and manually work more or less where I want to be. I could use the Pave builder and use gems to try and contain it, but it's just a lot of work for something that's just so much quicker. Now, what you can't see me doing is using my keyboard to make the gems bigger and smaller, and I'm going to start with that, and then I'm going to maybe put another one, go a little bit bigger maybe, and pop one there, 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 there. I'm not going to spend too much time on this in here because this can be time consuming depending on how you're working. Now what you can tell is I'm following the ISO forms of the surface. I could have extracted an edge and used the gems on a curve tool to do this, but hey, I want to be different. So I'm going to go a little bit smaller over here, and I'm going to pop a gem in there. So these lines are showing me my tolerances about how close I can get before I start breaking things. So I'm going to pop another little gem in there. And I think the idea with these gems, once again, this gets into the area of being artistic. They're supposed to represent the scales of the snake to some degree. So you've got to try and make these gems look scaly, for want of a better word. and just remembering what your setter is going to need to be able to actually produce this piece for you. So allow enough space for your beads. I'm going to pop some beads in there just now, and I'm going to start getting smaller again because I want to just taper off towards the back over here. Actually, I think it's going to taper off naturally by itself. A little bit smaller. And I think I might just leave it like that. Alright, so I'm done with this guy. And I'm going to go to the next little tool, which is going to be bead on the surface. Now I could use the pave builder, but once again, sometimes it's just more effort than it's worth for small amounts of stuff like this. If you're doing really regular types of surfaces, then those builders work very well. But for stuff like this, it's just easier to just do this. Okay, so what you can see now is very similar to the gem builder, except that what it's doing is putting my prongs out. What I want to do over here is, because we're going to have to boolean these prongs into it a little bit later, I want to just make sure that my prong is under the surface enough. So I'll get my drop and pull that down a bit. And I want to bring my height down. Now, depending on whether you're going to render this, and I think this is a big this is the big difference maybe between jewelers and T-splines and everyone else in T-splines, is that our stuff, generally speaking, you've got two lots of this stuff that you're rendering to show a customer and stuff that you're actually going to produce. And the stuff you're going to produce is a completely different model to what you're showing the customer. In this case, I'm going to make small prongs because I want it to look neat when I present it to the client. But in reality, these prongs will probably need to be a lot heavier than this. And I know all the jewelers going out there, how the hell am I supposed to set that? Even if my setter is watching this, he'd probably be a little bit angry with me. Alright, so let's go a little bit smaller in there. And I don't know how many of the jewelers out there who are watching this are also setters. My setter actually prefers that I don't lay out prongs at all. He asks that I just put the holes down, and he likes to cut up his own pave. And to be honest with you, I find that the finish I get from a manually cut pave is actually better than this. So in a typical scenario like this, in my real workflow, I wouldn't be doing this. I'd just be putting little pilot light holes down where let's make this smaller, put a couple of beads. Oopsie, I'm sorry. I'd normally be putting down a couple of little pilot holes for my setter, and he would do the rest himself. I'm just going to try and make this look neat, so I'm going to work my way. Maybe a little double prong over there. Everyone's going like, oh my god, that's such boring work. You're right, it is. Okay, I'm just doing a sound check over here. Is everyone still with me? Have I still got an audience?
Yeah, I am still here. Yep, we're bumping up against our time, so I think we've probably got a couple more minutes on this.
I'm actually just about done here. Now, I had spoken to you prior to this about having a word with the fellows from Keyshot, because I'm not going to have enough time to render this in V-Ray. It just takes too long.
Sure.
But I think I'm going to end up buying Keyshot for what it's worth. All right, so basically what I'm doing now is I'm just making this look like a nice neat little inlay area. All right, so these guys over here will boolean into, I'm going to rotate them around there with copy. I'm not going to do all the booleans. They're time consuming and they're also processor consuming. But the matrix tools now would allow me to just grab these stones, to grab all of the gems and create gem cutters for them, which would then boolean the holes out of the snake surface for me. And then the same thing if I could just lay down my little teardrop snake eye over there. I think
that looks great.
If we're button up for time, I think we'll probably leave it there for now.
That looks great, Chris. Thanks for taking a few minutes to kind of show that last little bit of the process, because I think that's important to show how how you really do complete. Wow, that looks beautiful. You just really do complete that. So,
Okay.
good. Well, Chris, thank you again so much for taking the time. If there are any final questions that we didn't answer, we probably have another just couple minutes. If there's any more specific questions about T-splines for Rhino or really any part of Chris's process, go ahead and type them in now, and then we'll let Chris get to his breakfast.
Yeah, while we're doing the questions over there, I might finish this model up and I'll post it onto the T-Splines forum.
Oh,
so I'll just do this while we're answering questions.
Great. Yeah, so the question about where this video will be, we'll get this up on YouTube. It probably won't be till Monday, but that's where that will be. There's one question just at the very start of the webinar about getting accuracy with T-splines, and I guess I can take a stab at that, and I'd be interested to hear what you actually do, Chris. So as far as accuracy, one nice thing about T-splines is you can start with NURBS, and as long as they're not trimmed, you can start with curves, and so you can get a T-spline to come out of a specific curve. You can also use the T-splines match command to match the kind of a border edge of a T-spline up to any curve or poly surface. So those are probably the two ways that I think of accuracy. Is that what you actually do in your own practice, Chris, or?
When I the very first time I drew the snake, what I actually did was draw a curve and I projected it against the sphere to represent the mouth area of the snake. And then I used the extrude command to work away from that. So yes, I do exactly what you're talking about. I also, to be able to use a tool to its best, you've got to realize what it is good for. So high precision work is feasible inside T-splines, but you need to remember that you're using T-splines inside Rhino, and why reinvent the wheel? You have all the Rhino tools at your facility, so use the right tool for the right job. Get the T-splines to build your organic stuff. Use your curves to start from, and you can get really good, really good high precision parts. When I work from curves in T-splines, as long as my curves are periodic and I move my points around exactly where I want, when I extrude from them, the extrusion doesn't get rebuilt, so I get exactly what I started from. But most of the time, I would actually use the Rhino tools. I would get my workflow going so that the organic part of my job would be finished in T-splines, and then I would convert everything to Rhino surfaces and work with the Rhino part of it from that point. It's a question of figuring out your workflow and making it work for you. And like I said, there is no right or wrong way to do anything. There's just your way. So for me, because I have a couple of years of Rhino experience, it was hard making the transition to T-splines. Okay, so what I've done over there, just for the jewelers, is let's turn off those gems. So as you can tell, because it's now a Rhino surface, there's your high precision seats all being cut for your stones. You with me now? You could have, in T-splines, you could have subdivided this surface maybe 5 or 10 times. You could have gone in and tried to round off all those subdivided surfaces, and then you could have tried to extrude them downwards, and I think you know what I'm talking about if you say that you're talking about 10 hours work to do something that took 3 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent example of combining T-splines to get the overall shape, and then booleaning that out with.
And then yes,
Rhino.
so yes, you can do it, and I actually know guys that use Silo and Modo, and they would try and build this entire thing inside Silo. And a couple of friends that I talked on their forums, it's not unheard of them working for a model for weeks. And I've been on the model for like 10 days and going like, oh my God, I'd be fired if I had to work on something for 10 days. So yes, you need to get a decent workflow. You need to figure out which tool is good for what and apply it in terms of that. So yes, you can get a very high precision surface if you really need to. No doubt about it, but in my particular workflow, I find that it's not really that important in the global view, because this model is going to be shown to a customer who can't see. Number one, she can't see whether it's precise or not when I show her a render. Number two, from my desk, it's going to go to prototyping. In prototyping, it may scale in X, it may scale in Y. The milling machine might have had a ledge in Y. The growing machine may have had a scaling issue in one of its directions. It's going to have grow lines all over it. The casting is going to be off in another direction, and then it's going to be tumbled, and then it's going to have porosity, and you know, there's 100 other things are going to happen to this model from the time it leaves my screen to the time it gets onto the customer's hand. So that sort of process you were showing across, you try to maximize your precision as much as you can. But there is such a thing as being too anal about it when you're working on something that's smaller than 1 cubic inch with, I mean, let's watch this. I mean, I know guys that work on, what are we talking about here? What are we talking about? Gee, we've got massive 68,000 polygons. I know guys that design entire buildings with 1,000 polygons.
Yep.
So you need to also bear in mind that you're working with an intense amount of information in a very small space, and a lot of that information is going to get lost.
Good points.
Most of the guys out there that have been doing this for a long time know that if you've got to mill this, your cutter is not going to get inside that gap, so this is going to become blended. If you're going to grow this, half of this detail is going to be lost when you polish it away. So in my scenario, it's less of an issue than possibly in other industries, say auto mechanics or something where a small drawing is turning into a big thing, like let's say the side of a car panel or something.
Yep.
For those guys, I think it would be a lot more important than it is in the case of a jeweler.
Yeah, I think those are excellent points.